Hi, welcome. I'm here with part two. They thought the story ended there. Three changes, and you were supposed to just understand, stay calm, and hope things fix themselves. But what if I told you those were only the surface signals? Because when another man is involved, it doesn't stop at appearance, interests, or space. That's just how it begins. What comes next is where most men lose everything, without even realizing when it slipped through their hands. In this part, we're going deeper into the shifts she won't explain, the behaviors that don't make sense, and the quiet decisions she's already making while you're still trying to hold it together. So pay attention. And before we start, drop your city in the comments. I want to see where you're watching from. Because if you missed the first signs, this is where it becomes irreversible. 1. She reinvents her image. This is where everything quietly begins to shift, long before any words are spoken, long before any distance is openly felt. It doesn't start with an argument or a confession. It starts with a subtle, almost unnoticeable transformation in how she presents herself to the world. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it entirely because on the surface, it looks like something positive. It looks like growth. It looks like self-improvement. It looks like she's finally stepping into her best version. But timing is everything. A woman doesn't suddenly wake up one day and decide to become a completely different version of herself without a trigger. Real growth is gradual. It builds over time, layered with consistency, setbacks, and effort. It doesn't arrive overnight with perfect execution and unwavering discipline. So when the shift is sudden, when it's sharp, when it feels like a switch has been flipped, that's when you need to stop looking at what she's doing and start asking why she's doing it. Because reinvention is never random. It always has direction, and direction always has a destination. At first, it's small things. She starts paying more attention to details she once ignored. The outfits become more intentional, more coordinated, more aligned with a certain aesthetic that wasn't there before. It's no longer about comfort or familiarity. It's about presentation. It's about impact. You notice she takes longer to get ready, not because she has to, but because she wants to. The mirror becomes a place of focus, not routine. She's not just getting dressed anymore. She's crafting an image. And the energy behind it is different. It's not the relaxed, unbothered energy you were used to. It's sharper, more precise, more aware, as if she knows she's being seen, even when she's not saying it out loud. Then the changes start stacking. The wardrobe evolves. Not slowly, not piece by piece, but in waves. New styles appear that you've never seen her wear before. Different cuts, different colors, different vibes. It's not an extension of who she was, it's a departure from it. Almost like she's stepping into a new role, one that requires a different look, a different presence. And when you ask about it, the answer is always clean, always controlled. I just felt like changing things up. I'm doing it for myself. I wanted something new. And on the surface, those answers make sense. They sound reasonable. They sound healthy. But what they don't explain is the urgency behind the change. They don't explain why something that was never a priority has suddenly become one. They don't explain why the effort has multiplied without any clear internal buildup leading to it. Because when a woman is truly doing something for herself, it doesn't come with this level of intensity all at once. It grows naturally. It doesn't replace her old self overnight. It evolves from it. This is different. This feels like acceleration. Then comes the physical transformation. The gym becomes consistent. Not occasional, not casual, but disciplined. The same place that once required motivation now becomes a priority. Time is carved out for it. Energy is invested into it. And it's not just about going, it's about progressing. There's focus on results, on improvement, on shaping something specific. And again, it happens fast. Too fast to be explained by a sudden burst of self-love. Because discipline without a clear emotional driver doesn't sustain itself like that. It doesn't lock in overnight and maintain intensity without something fueling it. That fuel is attention. Not necessarily the attention she already has, but the attention she's becoming aware of. The kind that makes her see herself differently. The kind that makes her realize she can be perceived in a new light, through new eyes. And once that awareness kicks in, everything tightens. Her posture changes. The way she carries herself becomes more deliberate. There's a subtle shift in confidence, but it's not grounded in comfort. It's grounded in performance. It's the confidence of someone who knows they're being evaluated, not just existing. Then you start noticing the patterns. The timing of her effort becomes selective. She puts in more effort when she's going out, when she's around certain environments, certain people. The consistency isn't just about routine anymore. It's about opportunity. It's about being seen at the right moments, in the right way. Photos become a part of it too. Not random, not spontaneous, but intentional. Angles, lighting, outfits, settings, everything starts to matter. And it's not just about capturing moments, it's about presenting them, sharing them, making sure they're visible. And here's where it becomes undeniable. When she no longer looks to you for validation. Before, your opinion mattered. Your compliments had weight. Your attention had value. But now, your reaction feels secondary. She accepts it, acknowledges it, but doesn't rely on it. It doesn't land the same way anymore. Because the validation she's tuned into isn't coming from you. And that's the shift most men struggle to accept. Because they keep focusing on the visible changes, thinking that if they support it, encourage it, or match it, everything will stabilize. They believe that if she's improving, the relationship must be improving too. But improvement isn't always alignment. Sometimes it's preparation. Preparation for a different version of herself that fits somewhere else. And the hardest part to understand is that she may not even be fully aware of it. She's not sitting there plotting, calculating, or consciously deciding to move away from you. She's responding to a feeling, a pull, a sense of possibility that makes her want to elevate, adjust, and reposition herself. And that repositioning shows up first in how she looks. Because appearance is the fastest way to signal change without saying a word. It's the most visible form of transformation, the easiest to control, and the hardest to question without sounding insecure. So it becomes the entry point, the place where everything begins to shift while still being socially acceptable, even praised. But beneath that surface, there's a quiet detachment forming. Because when someone starts building a new version of themselves that doesn't include you in its foundation, the gap doesn't show up immediately in words. It shows up in contrast, in the difference between who she was with you and who she's becoming now. Keynote 2 expanded up to minimum 1,200 words, and do not add any ending sentence. Do not add bullets points and mention every keynote heading. 2. She adopts new interests. This is where the transformation becomes harder to detect, because unlike appearance, which is visible and immediate, this shift operates beneath the surface. It doesn't scream for attention. It blends in. It disguises itself as curiosity, as growth, as evolution. And that's exactly why it's more dangerous, because it doesn't trigger alarm the way sudden physical change does. Instead, it invites admiration. At first, it feels like something positive. She's exploring, learning, expanding her world. You notice she's talking about things she never mentioned before. New topics enter her conversations. New ideas, new perspectives, new opinions. It's subtle at the beginning, almost refreshing. You might even feel proud, thinking she's becoming more well-rounded, more interesting, more engaged with life. But again, timing is everything. Because real interest doesn't appear fully formed out of nowhere. It builds gradually, fueled by genuine curiosity. It starts with exposure, then turns into engagement, and eventually becomes part of someone's identity. That process takes time. It has a natural rhythm. What you're witnessing here is different. It's immediate, accelerated, almost like she skipped the early stages and arrived directly at enthusiasm. She doesn't just try something new. She embraces it, fully. The woman who once dismissed certain activities now speaks about them with passion. The things she used to criticize suddenly make sense to her. The music she didn't like becomes her playlist. The environments she avoided become places she willingly enters. And when you question it, the answer is always framed as growth. I'm just being more open-minded. I realized I was limiting myself. I want to experience new things. And again, these responses are reasonable on the surface. They align with the idea of self-improvement. They position her as someone who's evolving, someone who's breaking out of old patterns. But what they don't explain is the precision of the shift, because it's not random exploration. It's selective. The new interests don't come from everywhere. They come from somewhere specific. They align in a direction. They point toward a particular lifestyle, a particular energy, a particular type of environment. And that alignment isn't coincidence. It's influence. Not necessarily forced, not necessarily even intentional, but influence nonetheless. Because attraction doesn't just make you notice someone. It makes you adapt. It pulls you toward compatibility. And one of the easiest ways to create compatibility is through shared interests. So without even realizing it, she starts adjusting. Not by pretending, not by faking enthusiasm, but by genuinely convincing herself that she likes these things, that they resonate with her, that they represent a new version of who she is. And that's the part that makes it so convincing, because it feels real to her. She's not lying when she talks about these new interests. She believes in them. She experiences them as authentic. But authenticity doesn't always mean origin. Just because something feels real in the moment doesn't mean it was born from her independent desire. Sometimes it's borrowed from the energy of someone else's world. You start to notice that her schedule changes. New activities begin to take up her time. Things that never existed in her routine suddenly become priorities. She's busy in ways she wasn't before, engaged in spaces she never explored before. And the consistency is what stands out. Because trying something once is curiosity, repeating it is commitment. And commitment without a clear personal history behind it usually has a deeper source. Then her opinions begin to evolve. Not slowly, not cautiously, but confidently. She speaks with certainty about things she once had no interest in. She develops perspectives that sound refined, almost rehearsed, as if they've been shaped through repeated exposure rather than personal discovery. It's not just that she likes something new, it's that she understands it, identifies with it, and defends it. And that shift in identity is where things become undeniable. Because interests are not just activities, they are extensions of identity. They signal belonging. They indicate where someone fits, what circles they align with, what kind of people they resonate with. So when her interests change, her identity begins to shift with them. And when her identity shifts, her connection to you is affected. Because the version of her that connected with you was built on a certain set of shared realities, shared tastes, shared routines, shared ways of seeing the world. When those foundations start moving, the connection doesn't break instantly, but it weakens. Not through conflict, through misalignment. You start to feel it in conversations. There's a slight disconnect, a subtle difference in energy. Topics that once flowed easily now feel forced. Interests that once brought you together no longer hold the same weight. It's not dramatic, it's not confrontational, but it's there. And the more she leans into her new interests, the more that gap widens. Because she's not just adding new layers to herself, she's replacing old ones. And that replacement doesn't always include you. What makes this even more complex is that she may genuinely believe she's becoming a better version of herself. She sees her openness as growth, her adaptability as maturity, her willingness to change as strength. And from her perspective, that's true. But what she may not see is the source of that change. Because when interest is driven by attraction, it carries a different kind of energy. It's not neutral, it's charged, it's motivated, it has direction. And that direction often leads away from where she was and toward where she feels something new. You might try to engage with these new interests, to meet her there, to show support, to participate, to reconnect through them. And for a moment, it might seem like it's working, but something feels off. Because you're not the reason those interests exist. You're responding to them. And there's a difference between sharing an interest and being the source of it. That difference creates distance, not visibly at first, but emotionally. Because her excitement, her enthusiasm, her energy around these new things isn't rooted in your connection. It's tied to something else, something that sparked the change in the first place. And over time, that becomes clear, not through what she says, but through what remains. Because when the influence behind those interests disappears, so do the interests themselves. They fade, they lose intensity, they stop being priorities. And just like that, the passion that seems so real, so strong, so defining is gone, replaced by something else, or nothing at all. And that's when you realize it was never about the activity. It was about alignment. Alignment with a feeling, alignment with a person, alignment with a possibility that made her see herself differently, even if only for a moment. Keynote 3 expanded up to minimum 1,200 words, and do not add any ending sentence. Do not add bullets points and mention every keynote heading. 3. She redefines the relationship. This is where everything becomes difficult to question, because unlike appearance or interests, this shift hides behind logic. It presents itself as maturity, as emotional intelligence, as growth. It sounds reasonable. It sounds healthy. And that's exactly why most men don't resist it, they support it. At first, it begins with language. The tone changes. The words she uses start to evolve. Conversations that once felt natural now feel analyzed. Simple moments turn into discussions. Feelings turn into frameworks. She's no longer just experiencing the relationship, she's examining it. And you think, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe she's becoming more self aware. Maybe she wants to strengthen what you have. But again, timing matters. Because this sudden awareness doesn't come out of nowhere. Emotional intelligence doesn't just switch on overnight with full clarity and confidence. It develops over time through reflection, through experience, through gradual understanding. What you're seeing here isn't gradual, it's immediate. She suddenly starts talking about boundaries, about needing space, about understanding herself better, about not losing her individuality in a relationship. And on the surface, every one of these ideas is valid. Every one of them sounds like something a healthy, self-aware person would say. So you agree. You respect it. You give her the room she's asking for because you don't want to be controlling, you don't want to be insecure, you don't want to be the reason she feels restricted. But what you don't realize is that the meaning behind these words has shifted. Before, the relationship was a shared space. Now it's something she's stepping back from. And that distance doesn't feel like rejection at first. It feels like adjustment. She asks for time alone, and you give it. She becomes less available, and you understand. She pulls back emotionally, and you tell yourself she's just processing things. But slowly, that space starts to take shape. It becomes consistent, predictable, almost structured. She has more time for herself now, but somehow less time for you. And when you bring it up, the explanation always returns to growth. I need to focus on myself. I don't want to lose who I am. I think we've become too dependent. Again, these aren't wrong statements, but they weren't concerns before. That's what matters. Because real issues don't appear overnight with perfect articulation. They build. They show signs. They create friction long before they're spoken out loud. So when someone suddenly has clarity about problems that never existed before, that clarity didn't come from nowhere. It came from comparison. Not necessarily direct, not necessarily conscious, but comparison nonetheless. Because when a new presence enters her world, even if it's just emotional, it introduces a different dynamic, a different energy, a different way of interacting. And that contrast makes her reassess what she has. Things that once felt normal now feel lacking. Things that once felt comfortable now feel limiting. And instead of saying, "There's someone else influencing how I feel," she frames it in a way that makes sense internally. She calls it growth. She calls it self-discovery. She calls it needing more. And slowly, the relationship gets redefined. The emotional access you once had starts to shrink. She shares less. She opens up less. She doesn't come to you the same way anymore. And it's not because she's trying to hurt you. It's because her emotional energy is being redirected. Not fully removed, but divided. And divided attention changes everything. Because connection requires presence. It requires focus. It requires emotional investment. And when that investment is no longer centered on you, the bond weakens. Even if nothing dramatic has happened, you start to feel it in the small things. The conversations become shorter. The warmth becomes inconsistent. The effort becomes selective. She's still there, but not fully. And when you try to address it, the conversation shifts into analysis. She starts explaining the relationship instead of feeling it. She talks about patterns, about dynamics, about what's healthy and what's not. And suddenly, you're not just her partner anymore. You're being evaluated, measured against standards that were never discussed before, judged based on expectations that seem to have appeared overnight. And you try to adjust. You try to meet her where she is. You try to improve, to adapt, to show her that you're willing to grow too. But something doesn't click. Because this isn't about fixing specific issues. It's about a shift in perception. And perception isn't corrected through effort alone. Because once someone starts seeing the relationship through a different lens, everything gets filtered through that perspective. Your actions get interpreted differently. Your intentions get questioned. Your presence gets redefined. And the hardest part is that she may genuinely believe she's doing the right thing. She sees herself as someone who's becoming more aware, more independent, more aligned with her needs. She doesn't view it as pulling away. She views it as stepping into herself. But what she may not recognize is that this new version of herself is being shaped in response to something external. something that made her question what she had, something that made her imagine something different. And that imagination creates distance. Not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually, until the relationship you once had starts to feel unfamiliar, not because of a single event, but because the foundation has shifted. And by the time you fully understand what's happening, the dynamic has already changed. The closeness is no longer natural. The connection is no longer effortless. And the space she asked for has become the new normal. If you've made it this far, then you already understand something most men refuse to face. This was never about one argument. It was never about one bad phase. And it was never about something you could fix by trying harder. It was about awareness. Because once you start seeing these patterns, you can't unsee them. You start to realize that attraction isn't maintained by effort alone, and connection isn't saved by chasing someone who's already drifting away. And that's the part that hits the hardest. Not the change itself, but the moment you recognize it for what it really is. Because now you're left with a choice. You can ignore it. You can rationalize it. You can keep hoping things go back to how they were. Or you can accept reality with clarity. And clarity doesn't mean reacting emotionally. It doesn't mean confronting, begging, or trying to compete with someone you've never even seen. It means observing without denial, understanding without excuses, and most importantly, respecting yourself enough to not hold on to something that's already letting go of you. Because the truth is simple, even if it's uncomfortable. When someone starts building a version of themselves that no longer includes you, your job isn't to fight for a place in it. Your job is to recognize that you were never meant to fit into what they're becoming. And that realization is where your power returns. Not in control, not in persuasion, but in detachment. The kind of detachment that doesn't come from anger, but from understanding. So don't panic when you see the signs. Don't rush to react. And don't lose yourself trying to hold on to someone who's already exploring life without you. Because the moment you stop chasing what's pulling away is the moment you start attracting what actually aligns with you. If this opened your eyes, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and stay close. And before you go, drop your city in the comments. I want to see who's really paying attention. Because the men who understand this don't just avoid heartbreak. They move differently.